Okay, so this is recording. Okay, so I'm here to help mediate the dispute between Steve and Victoria. Dapper Dino and Manya are here as well to witness this. I'm just going to point out that I do this professionally, and although I do this professionally, I am doing this pro bono. I don't expect to receive any form of payment or advantage from either party. It is taking place on a Sunday afternoon for me, so it's ideally if we can try and get to a quick resolution, that would be great. I am a neutral party, but I do acknowledge that I have been involved in streams and do have pre-existing relationships with you both, and that I consider Steve a friend. But regardless of that, this is going to be treated professionally, and I don't believe it will affect my ability to act impartially. If everyone can agree to conduct...
Sorry, my bad. Are we live somewhere?
No, I'm recording this in StreamYards, and afterwards I'll be sending a copy to Steve and Cheshire. So this is not going out live anyway.
Oh yeah, because the background said live on the radicals, and I was like,
what? That's just the background I've got. That's just there. No, that's just we're definitely not live. I can promise you that.
Thanks.
So if everyone can agree to sort of conduct themselves respectfully and I think ultimately agree that a resolution is the desired outcome. As I just mentioned, the mediation will be recorded, and I'll provide a copy to each of you afterwards. There is an expectation of confidentiality with the recording. It's just for your own use. Both of you will have the opportunity to express a viewpoint, and you should both be able to do so uninterrupted. If there is a disagreement, or if, say, for instance, Steve Chesh says something and you disagree, afterwards, I will ask you what your thoughts are on that. So you will both get the opportunity. I think yelling over the top of each other, arguing back and forth, it's not going to get anyone anywhere. I don't want to use a mute button because I don't think it's appropriate with everyone here. If I have to, I will, but I really don't want to. I'll ask a few questions in the best interest of assisting in finding a compromise. So I'll ask Steve, do you have any questions about what I just said?
I do not.
Okay. Chesh, any questions?
I don't agree with this being for personal use only, and I think that should a need arise, that this ought to be allotted to be made public. And I feel like given the conversation that happened yesterday, I feel like depending on how this moderation and mediation goes, it's fair that all of the mods who were dragged into this last night deserve to hear what happens.
Steve, do you agree to that?
Not tentatively, no, but we'll see how it goes.
All right.
Well, that's a pretty big thing.
Yeah, I don't think that's fair.
I do not agree with that.
Okay.
I think it's fair.
Hang on. Sorry, Dapper. Sorry. Hang on.
No.
Can we agree to try and resolve it in the interim, and as it progresses, because otherwise it's the end of the conversation, and there's no resolution. And I think we all agree we want a resolution. So can we table that for the moment, but come back to it?
Yes.
I'm okay with that, but I do want it noted that I do not think that's fair.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'm happy to say that isn't resolved at this stage, and that we will come back to it for discussion. So, okay. Look, just for transparency, Steve's given me a bit of a background of what's happened. So I've heard from Steve. Chesh, I guess the question I'd ask you is, first, what ideally are you wanting to achieve today? And is there anything you want to bring up now?
Nothing in particular that I want to bring up now. The only thing I want to sort of achieve at this point is actually just a mutual understanding, not even necessarily a resolution. If it takes more than one of these, I think that's fine. Okay,
cool. All right. Steve, anything, I guess, what are you hoping to achieve, and anything you want to comment in regards to that?
I'm hoping to achieve a mutual resolution that is equivocal to, or excuse me, amicable to both of us. That is fair and is understandable by both parties involved.
Okay. So from my understanding, and please, Chesh, correct me if I'm wrong, from what Steve's said, and I guess from what I sort of can ascertain, it seems as though there's a disagreement as to, I guess, payments and ownership of the channel. And also it seems as though there may have been a misunderstanding in what Steve believes the agreement is and what you believe the agreement is. Is that fair?
I would say that's a fair assessment. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay. So as far as what's your understanding as far as the ownership of the channel, Chesh?
50-50 partnership.
Okay. Now, when you say 50-50 partnership, are you talking about a 50-50 as in you both own the channel, or as in a profit share?
Yes, as in it is our channel, as that has been what it was described to me for the past 2.5 years.
All right. And from what, Steve, you've told me, you disagree with that.
That has never been the case. Everybody that has known that it has been my channel that I would have the final say. I'm under the impression that she has always known that. When people ask who had the final say, she would say that it would defer to Steve. She has referred to it as my channel on multiple occasions. She has said that I own the channel and that I have final say. This is news to me. When she was with Reds was completely clear that Steve owns the channel, has 100% control of the channel, but she's bringing brought in as a partner for the profit sharing. That has always been the last 2 years, for what I understand. This is news to me that it is now changed, and that's why I want the mediation. Because why would I give up a channel that I fought so hard to give any equity out of that?
So I guess what I'd ask both of you is, do you think it's fair to say that, assuming the best intentions for both of you, because I guess knowing you, I don't think either of you would openly deceive the other, can we agree that there's clearly a misunderstanding, whether that's around language, whether that's around expectations, that should have been communicated better? I think that's fair to say.
Yes.
I would say, as of last night, no, I don't believe that is the case.
Okay. Did you want to elaborate on that?
Not for now.
Okay. So I guess to move forward, is there a resolution that we think we can both get to? Because from my understanding, Steve's not prepared to, or the position at the moment is Steve's not prepared to give up any part of the channel. Chesh believes she's entitled to it. Is there a middle ground we can reach on that?
That's why we're here to try to
I believe so.
Okay. Can I make a suggestion? And I think I've got a few notes that, and unless you tell me any different to what I've been told, and please correct if there's anything wrong, Chesh. I've sort of drafted a few things based on how I would normally see a situation like this handled. There is an issue you're both in different countries. So setting up a company is going to be a difficult scenario regardless. I would imagine, because of international business law, generally it would be set up in the US, which opens a million tax complications, in particular for you, Chesh, which you probably would rather avoid. I say that as someone who's not an expert in either American or Canadian taxation, but just as a layman observation. So if we were to say that Steve retains ownership of the channel, but agrees that you are an independent contractor who contracts to him, and Steve, you agree that Chesh is any part of the decision-making process while she's involved with the channel, and even though as the owner you technically have the final say, that any input she provides will always be considered, and where there's a dispute over, well, I guess where you guys are immovable on something, a third party can come in to help resolve it.
I agree with all except for the third party. That exactly what you said was my understanding of our agreement. And if there was a miscommunication, then that's what we're here to work out, because there was no meeting of the minds when we're talking about vastly different things.
Chesh, what are your thoughts?
We had multiple conversations back when Boole was alive about how to build NonSequitur into a business. The discussion at that time was that 50-50 between me and Steve, and then a cut equally from each of us to go to Boole, with a situation where all three of us had equal say in what had happened with the channel. With Boole gone, that removed that third party factor, as well as there was no change in the discussion of things being 50-50 to be discussed between us. Also, I have a recording from last night of Steve agreeing that it was 50-50 and adding a caveat. I have no problems if Steve wants to make changes or adjustments to be negotiated and to be decided on what those may or may not be. I am absolutely okay with making changes as necessary and what's needed for the channel. However, when we discussed with Boole what we were going to structure the business as, what it came down to was Steve told me that I would be 50-50 partner on everything. However, when the business was built, he would bill me as an employee of some kind. That was part of the discussion. So it was a situation where I was told that with the functionality, I would be 50-50 partner for everything. However, on paper, I would become an employee.
Okay.
I was okay with that under the understanding that what was on paper was actually different than functionality, and that no longer seems to be the case, which I find problematic.
May I respond to that?
Yeah, I think we can resolve this pretty easy, but go for it.
All right. So yeah, most of that is correct. I put it as a subcontractor because of, as you said, it would be very difficult to formulate a business. She is a manager of the channel, wasn't an owner of the channel. I've always became full as far as final say. That has never been given to her. I've never said that if there's a dispute, I don't have final say. That was always part of the agreement. I was never going to give that up. I made that very clear to multiple people. I was never going to give up having the final say. Why would I do that? So I don't know where that ever came in. But as you said, because of the taxations and all that stuff, need to figure out a way to pay her appropriately. And so that was the decision would be more of an independent contractor, which, I would pay her 50% of all residual, all revenue, and then residuals for her time on the channel. We were trying to work out, this was later on, we were trying to work out if she stays for 6 months, she'll get residual for 6 months from the show she did, which is something like that I'm willing to negotiate. But the whole thing was for profit sharing, for the 50%, 50-50 of the profit involved. As far as the ownership of the channel, I've always 100% of the channel. I've always had final say in the channel. That has never been negotiated. That has never been discussed. And she has always told people, from my understanding, if there's a dispute, I have the final say, that I own the channel. So I don't know where that ever came up that was any different, because this has never been anything but exactly what she has said, as far as she would be paid as, it's not really an employee, it's a subcontractor, but rather than a partner, because I don't know how she does her taxes, but I know how I do my taxes, which I get a 1099 miscellaneous. That has to be accounted for. And if I give her money from that, then I have to factor that in as far as the expenses and the total amount of the net from the gross, because the gross is what you have the income, but the net is after all the expenses plus my initial cost minus any taxation I have on that income coming into me. That's given into her, has to be passed on somewhere down the line. So
just to interject quickly, I don't think you two realize how close you are to actually an agreement here. So here's from what Cheshire said, an employee wouldn't be the best structure for you, because then Steve would have to charge taxes
correct
along those lines, and you'd probably find you'd have to pay taxes in the US and then
with the math I did, when I actually mathed out the amount of money Steve would actually owe me for the amount of work I've done, I would rather pay the taxes and take the money.
I don't know what that means.
I would rather be an employee with the charging that I did, looking at the amount of money that would be owed to me, and I would rather take the hit on the taxes.
I don't know how much. I'm really confused on that.
So when you say, you're talking about work previously done?
Yes, and severance, if we go that direction.
Okay. So if I can make a suggestion that I think is the win-win, I guess it's going back to what was being discussed before. I think the reality is, even under what you said, on paper, Steve would own the channel, because that's better for...
I have no dispute of trying to take because there's only one ownership on a YouTube channel. I had no intention of ever saying that you should give that to me, because that is the functionality of YouTube. That was never a concession of decision-making ability. On top of it, I think it's a little bit problematic if Steve is taking my respect for his decisions and my earnestness of his friendship as a business decision when I said that I am willing to defer to him. That was a matter of respect, and a matter of respect that I was under the impression was mutual.
So do you think we could, because look, with it's always difficult with partnerships in any kind of business sense, because ultimately there has to be responsibilities for different sections, and I guess responsibilities for decision making. It's you can't always have two clashing, and this isn't just yourself.
Yes,
so
that would be what a third-party moderation would be for, which is what we had initially agreed on when Boole was still alive. When Boole was no longer with us, the third party moved to Reds. When Reds was no longer active, we had yet to decide on a third party, and when Boole had died, I had also suggested that we get somebody else to replace Boole as producer. All of these were rejected.
Red still has some veto power. Red still has input on the channel.
So if I can make
okay. Just if I may interject here, did you communicate that when Reds went offline? Did you communicate that to Shesh that Red still has the veto power?
Cheshire always knew that he had that ability.
No, I would be
when Cheshire went offline that he has the veto power.
I would be under the impression, because there's now that there's an issue of conflict of interest.
Okay, all right. I'll put a suggestion out there. What if we divide different parts of responsibility? So, say for instance, I would imagine artwork is something that, and design of the channel is something that we could say is Cheshire's responsibility. Before
we go there, there's something else that I haven't quite resolved yet.
Yeah, sure.
I was told that this was going to be a 50-50 agreement. What Steve is now describing to me is not a 50-50 agreement. What was described yesterday was a 50-50 agreement, but I retain 100% control over what happens. This is a matter of not if there's a dispute, I'm just going to do what I want. This was never what the agreement was about. The agreement was about on good faith. And this is not what has been being demonstrated. And this was not what I had agreed to. If we've got a 50-50 issue, there was always a third party that was able to be reliant. And now Steve is asking for 100%, which is a change to what was said as a 50-50, which is now being described as what is not actually a 50-50 deal.
That was never described that way. The 50-50 was for profit sharing. I always said I was going to be in control. I always said I would never give up control of the channel again or any ownership of the channel, period. I've always maintained this to everybody involved. Everybody.
There are two things here that are being confused with. One is the primary ownership of the YouTube channel. You are the owner, Steve. We get it. But 50-50 partnership, meaning in the decision-making and the financials.
We're talking about the channel, though, Manya. There's no interest in the channel.
Hold on. Let me confirm it with Shesh. Shesh, are you talking about the decision-making and the financials?
Yes.
See, I know what she's talking about. Please don't tell me, Steve. Thank you.
Right. This is going to be just to interject. I understand there's other people here as well. It's really difficult to run these mediations if there's multiple voices. I understand what you were saying, and that's all good there. But I guess it's pretty clear that you two won't agree on that point. So rather than look at the past, let's look at moving forward and find something we can agree on.
I actually have a contention with that. I'm fine with moving on for now. Like, I'm fine with that, but I just want something cleared. I've been working for 2.5 years under this assumption. And so if that is different, then there needs to be a decision that is made. Either I was an employee, I was a partner, and now I want to be an employee, or I was a partner the whole time. So one of these things needs to be decided. And depending on what that decision is, will kind of changes a lot of things moving forward. I'm okay to see what resolution can still be come to without making that decision, but that is something that I personally and objectively need that answered.
Sure, no worries. I've made a note of that. So,
thank you.
That's okay. These things are good fun. Okay, so ultimately, the ownership of the channel isn't in dispute. The agreement or what was discussed is in dispute. I don't think we're going to have a meeting of the minds there, whether it's I think we call it a miscommunication, misunderstanding, because that way we can move forward with it. I do understand what you're saying about having done the work for a couple of years, Chesh, and I think that is an important point that we do have to bring up. So as far as if we're able to get something moving forward, can we agree that Steve would be the owner of the channel, Chesh would be an independent contractor to Steve and the channel, and now what we need to resolve is as far as decision making and responsibilities within the channel. Now, I think the best scenario is to split that into responsibilities. So there's certain things that Steve is good at, or Steve can take responsibility for, and there's certain things I think maybe Chesh could take responsibility for. So as I was mentioning, so things like the graphics, the artwork, that would seem to be definitely your domain, Chesh. As far as maybe organising shows, organising guests, and format, I guess deciding what the shows are, that could be something that Steve is responsible for. How does that sit with
That's
both?
how it was originally, yes.
I have a little bit of contention before moving on to the distribution of work, simply because there was arguably what Steve might call a meeting of the minds last night. Everyone in that meeting said that this was a 50-50 deal. Now, Steve is going to remain with the keys to the car that is the Non-Sequitur Show channel. So it might be better moving forward to discuss this as a business, with the channel being one asset of the business, because you cannot have more than one ownership of a YouTube channel. When I say in one context that, yes, of course, Steve, the channel belongs to you, in regards to anything relating to his lawsuit with Kyle, of course. But when we're working on the channel and I call it our channel, that I have just as many clips of myself saying that. So the context of that matters in what Steve is referencing.
And that was not part of the original agreement. I've always said that I retained complete ownership of the channel. She'd be paid for her work. That's how she wanted it. That's why I set it up the way through a PayPal. That's why I set up through the taxation, because we couldn't do it as a business, because as you pointed out, I'm in the United States, she's in Canada. So I said, I will just pay you as a contractor. And then you worry about your own taxes, but I have to pay it out of mine. She was quite fine with that. And I'm like, okay, I have control of the channel. I have control of the decision, but she's being paid for her work, which is fair compensation. That is what we discussed. That is the agreement that I want to be holding to. And changing it later on to make it sound like I was offering her more than what I actually offered is, to me, not conducive to a negotiation, because that is not the original thing. Why people think that, I have no idea. I don't know what they've been told. I know what I said, and I know what other people have said. And I know what she has told people about this arrangement, which is exactly kind of what we're talking about now. I'm willing to negotiate in fairness to try to make sure that she's adequately compensated. That's the whole goal, to adequately compensation. But if she and I didn't, we talked about very different terminologies last night. That I think there was a miscommunication there. I'm fine with that, but we have to go forward, because I am not willing to give up anything on the channel, period. That's non-negotiable with me. I've always said that. That's not what I maintain. I don't know why people think otherwise, again, but that's my position. I want her to have fair compensation. Absolutely.
May I clarify something?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so the contention that I'm having, and why this has sort of become an issue with this I get to make the decision problem, is that when we were discussing financials, Steve was maintaining control of an asset of an amount of money, claiming that I had no say or no stake in that amount, which is not something I ever agreed to. As far as I was concerned, and as far as I understood, it was 50-50 of the channel. Of course, I was never going to ask for control of the channel, because there can only be one person. And knowing what Steve has gone through, I was willing to grant that concession. I'm not going to do that to him. I'm not a jerk. I'm not unreasonable. So to say that he's maintaining the channel as owner, yes, of course he is. But that does not mean 100% say to veto. And why would we have somebody such as Reds or Bull that could veto and have veto power and step in as a third party if you were just going to have 100% control anyway? On top of that, why would I agree to give up any control whatsoever and not be an employee or not have any like control over the situation? What person in their right mind would say, hey, listen, I will do all of the work, whatever gets thrown at me. I'm only ever going to get paid any kind of what happens to be made by the show, but you get to make the decision on what I'm doing, what you're doing, what I'm wearing on the next show. The problem with this terminology is that if you have 100% say on anything that happens, it means that you can fire me in an instant. This is not fair. And this is never what I had agreed to, nor had I understood. I was respectful to you, and I was very much respectful that, hey, listen, if you had something that you wanted to do and there was a disagreement, I was likely to defer to you because I still viewed this as a respectable thing, that if I had a disagreement, you would do the same towards me. Please do not mistake me being respectful towards you as a friend, and please do not misunderstand me being respectful in that I did not want to cause additional confusion during your lawsuits and during the PR work I was helping you do and doing for you, in that you were in fact the rightful owner of the channel comparatively to Kyle.
Okay.
I just want a quick response.
Yeah, I was going to just really quickly say it's very clear that there's a genuine misunderstanding.
Correct.
Between
Yeah,
the two.
absolutely. And I'm quite aware of that. And again, maybe I have the same feelings towards that. Don't mistake, my friendship to say that I would ever give up something that I worked so hard to get back, because it was never on the table. That is something that I've maintained from day one, that
Steve,
I was never going to give up. I was never going to give up any of that from day one. And I do believe she was fully aware of that. However, like I said, when I said for the final decision making, only one person can make a decision, a final decision. Only one has that ability, period, in any kind of thing. When I say that Reds or will have some veto power, it means they have input. But Reds knows, and if you ask Reds, that when it comes to the absolute final decision, that was going to be mine. Reds is well aware of that, even with his veto power. So bringing that up doesn't seem to make any sense to me, because I've always maintained, even with Reds, that I have the final say.
Steve, I have an audio recording of you saying that in a 50-50 agreement, no person has any power over the other one, and it is equal, and you bring in third arbitration.
In some cases like that, but that wasn't what we decided on from the initial thing. I
disagree.
Yeah, well, when I was talking about that, I said, because you had brought it up, I said there are 50-50 partnerships where it is complete across the board, and you require to have a third party. That has never been the case here.
If I may.
Well, no, let Chris run it, please, because it's not as confusing.
If I may.
Go ahead. Go ahead. If Chris allows it, it's just
Chris, please. So it looks like that Shesh is not willing. Whatever you thought was the agreement, Steve, Shesh is not happy with that. She's not going to agree to that. That's very evident.
Okay.
You having 100% say, she's not happy with that because there are concerns, and she has genuine concerns.
And I do as well.
Those are genuine concerns.
So are mine.
I get that too. So we have to work with this now. That's having 100% control of the channel, Shesh will, and 100% control of the decision making. Shesh is not going to agree to that.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
that's what I'm getting to. Yeah.
This is where we move. This is what we work on and we move forward with. That's kind of settled, I think. Shesh, if I may, do you think that's fair? That's a fair assessment, Shesh?
I think that it's fair to say when there was agreement of 50-50 and that agreement was not 50-50, according to him and according to me, we have different understandings of what the agreement was in the first place. The only way to rectify that, and as far as I'm concerned, is to have an understanding of picking one of three things, which I had already described, as well as decide the best way to move forward. Quite frankly, with the way this has been handled, I do not trust Steve as a partner at this point, with the number of clips that I have pulled with timestamps from the number of times I was referred to as a 50-50 partner, having the same deal and conditions as Kyle, not even including screenshots of conversations. I did math with the amount of work that I have been doing at an average to low of the positions that Steve on recording said that I was doing, comes out to an exorbitant amount of money after this amount of time that has gone by. And at this point, I do not feel comfortable with him having 100% moving forward. He's already said that he's not willing to negotiate on that. He's not willing to work with me on that. That's okay. That's his prerogative. As I said, I never questioned whether or not he would have ownership of the channel itself, because there can only be one owner of the channel. So before we move forward, I think that if we are going to move forward in any kind of business arrangement, we need to decide what I need to be compensated up to this point. I think that's the only fair way to move forward on at least equal footing, because as of right now, this is not equal footing.
The agreement is that she gets compensated for the work she has done on the show, which is the revenue that we brought in for the show. That's all that's going to be, half of that, which is the revenue from the show. That's the only thing she's entitled to, and that's the only thing she will get.
So for last 2 years, you don't think she has done any work?
We have both done, but she's done it on her own channel, which is irrelevant. Work done on the channel means literally
Chris,
live on this channel. That is not.
You know how? Okay, how many subscribers?
Manya. It's completely.
Okay, I'll be quick. Sorry,
it's completely absurd. That's not how business is done.
Oh yeah,
Chris, may I please point out that I was working for those 2 years under a false pretense that I was going to be 50-50 in a different agreement than what Steve thought I had agreed to. Whether it was accurate or not.
I think it's fair to say that
we both obviously
you were working under a false assumption.
Yes.
Ideally, we resolve this in a way that fixes all of that. Okay, so I'm going to move to something else, because I think there's an overall thing that could resolve this that I do want to suggest. My understanding is part of the... Okay, so actually, before we do that, if I can ask you, Chesh, do you have a compromise suggestion for decision-making?
Steve pays me for the work I do under the agreement that I thought we were moving forward, and then we go forward with either he decides to take me on as a contractor with keeps his 100% veto power. I get a proper job description, and I stick to that proper job description at a fixed rate.
Okay.
To be increased as there are different jobs or things that are added responsibilities, of course.
Yeah. Is it something where we could set up where we say there's a 50-50 profit sharing arrangement? Now, I do note one thing that you did say, Chess, that was a concern. That was a little bit of a flag for me as well, which was technically Steve could fire you at any time. What if we were to put an agreement in place where there was fixed periods where that couldn't happen?
I would, depending on how that was worded, I might be okay with that. It would have to not exclusive, obviously, because as of almost 2 years, I've been working almost exclusively towards NonSec and towards this agreement that I thought falsely that I was under, as well as which was only restrictive. I don't mean to say that Steve wasn't allowing me to go work other places, by the way. I want to make that very clear. He wasn't saying that I can't go work other places, but the expected amount of work I was doing was that I would be unable to work other places.
Okay.
Is that reasonable? Okay. The only other concern that I have is Steve retaining 50-50 as well as, sorry, not 50-50. Steve retaining 100% power over decisions over the show means that if I were to take an agreement that had anything to do with compensation for any even portion of the show, with his 100%, he would be able to make a change on that however he so desired. So we'd have to write in something about that to make that function.
Absolutely, yeah.
Lastly, even operating under what Steve has said so far, assuming the most charitable thing that I can, if there was a misunderstanding about 50-50 arrangement for money, because what I understood that it was 50-50 of channel total, meaning total amount of money that would include all AdSense, all Teespring, all Patreon, etc., as a whole. So that would include ad revenue, and that we would have a 50-50 agreement on what happened with ad revenue money that would be considered residual from the time beforehand, because as far as I was concerned, this was a 50-50 split. I have a concern that under operating the way Steve has it set up, he is vetoing my say in where those profits go, even while I'm agreeing with him where I believe that the profits should go.
If Chris may interject, because if that was the case, then she would have to incur half of the expenses, which means that all the money going into it would be going in to pay off the $5,000, over $5,000 I spent on that channel, which she hasn't put in a dime for. So I don't understand anything that she's saying, because it's not anything that we discussed. When if she was a quote 50-50 on the channel itself, I paid $5,000 for the channel, which means I have invested in the channel. She has not put a dime in the channel. So how does that work out? Because all the money coming in for the channel should be putting off that debt if it was that kind of arrangement. That's debt. That's debt. Well,
Okay,
it's not. I'm sorry. It's not debt because that's a technical.
It's
expenses.
It's an expense.
Right.
So if we were to say, okay, so there's this amount, we'll call it $5,000 as a round number. So the amount. So there's the dispute over that. This should actually be really simple to solve. Okay, so we've got this residual amount that's coming in from the time, I guess, prior to you formally being an active part of the channel, or when, like the stuff from before. So this amount is still going to come in every month. And there's also an expense of $5,000. What if we offset, rather than offsetting everything, which would happen in a partnership, which I guarantee, I assume you wouldn't want, Chesh. What if we say that residual amount goes 100% towards repaying the $5,000, anything above and beyond that,
which is exactly the structure that I told her. That's exactly what I offered.
But once that is concluded, so that debt is paid technically, then everything at that point is a straight down the middle.
That's what I was
Hey,
thinking.
Chris.
So, and Cheshire, you're going to say, yeah.
I never disagreed with the money going there. That was never my contention.
Cool. I think we've got to.
There seems to have been there was contention there, but
yeah,
okay.
there was no contention with that. There was no contention with that yesterday. There has never been any contention with that. What I had contention with was you saying that I did not have any right to have a say in where that money went. Period. When I was already agreeing that that money should be going to pay off channel expenses, which, as you just stated, which I agree with, would include that $5,000. That has never been in contention.
I will tell you that there was completely not a meeting of the minds there, because it's not the conversation that she had with me.
I'm more than happy to share that if you would like, and you can come to your own conclusion.
We do,
please.
Because obviously she was talking about the residuals, which means that it wasn't going to the expenses, because I had offered when I had suggested, I said in December, the amount that I want to make sure that she's paid fairly. That's the whole point of this, right? Fair compensation. I'm not trying to screw anybody over. That's never been anything that I would ever do. I said for that channel for the December, it made $5 in revenue, which should be split. She said, no, it made $125, rounding up. Okay.
I did the math of the entirety.
Which means that it was from the previous month. And I said, well, no, that's going to be paid directly to me. That covers expenditures, and that's supposed to go back in the channels we agreed upon. She's like, no, I still get half of that. This is exactly how I remember that going. If I misunderstood, that's fine. But this is what I'm remembering. And then I was like, well, there's still a amount of expenditure here that she did not put a dime into, which means that I took all the liabilities, all the risk.
Okay.
Because under the impression that she would be paid for her services, she would be paid as an independent contractor, as she used the word employee, but it's not, but as an independent contractor, and I remained full control of the channel and for decision making. That was the agreement, period. That was the agreement. If we didn't have a meeting of the minds of that, then I don't know what else to say on that. But it seems to be the case that she was not willing to give me $2,500 to buy into that debt.
Hang on a second, Steve.
I have a question about the clarification of that $5,000. Are you not receiving that money back due to your lawsuit from Kyle?
I don't know if I'm ever going to receive a dime from that.
That's not my question. Yeah. Is that part of the judgment that you are supposed to receive that $5,000 back from Kyle?
Yes.
Then why are you going to then take that $5,000 once you receive it to Kyle and put it back into the channel and or back to me if that's where we're deciding the money is going? Because it ought to be a 50-50 agreement as to where that money then goes, because that was the contention I was having.
Right now it's an expenditure. If I get money from
That's
him,
not what I'm asking.
I'm telling you, if I was to get money from him that paid
Chris,
off that
please,
5,000,
that's not what I'm asking.
I would make an agreement to pay you half to pay that amount back. I would be fine with that.
Cool.
But right now,
Okay,
it isn't
so
acceptable.
just
matter of
I'm going to be
principle,
very
Chris,
clear
you
here.
haven't agreed.
So what you're saying is that until such time as this
He's
residual
requesting to
amount
take,
will
yes.
offset the $5,000, but assuming that Steve gets that $5,000 back, that goes back in, and at which point, so say $1,000 of residuals has gone towards that, the 5,000 comes back in, wipes that debt, that $1,000, bang, half to Chesh, correct?
That would be fair to me, yes.
Okay. Chesh,
Why would that not be fair?
I have contention only with that we are not able to communicate with each other at this point.
And I think she's right on that. I think we speak very different languages. I think we speak very different terminology. And it's unfortunate because we work very well together on other shows like Caffeine Corner. But there's too much contention that's not being able to be resolved properly.
I'm also not entire. I am having a little bit of a contention with how this is handled, which may be a separate issue. It may not be. I'm not sure. So I'm going to kind of put it out there and you guys please correct me. But you unilaterally decided to take money to put it into the $5,000 without communicating that that's what you were doing, when, as far as I knew, this was money you were going to be receiving from Kyle. Therefore, this is a situation where you made a decision about money without communicating, while saying I didn't have a right to that money, while saying I had no say to that money, while saying we weren't even 50-50 on any decision made, even in the agreement that you've now at this point agreed was the case. And why are you expecting me to take a cut out of, if we decided that none of this money goes to back into the channel and it goes exactly 50-50, why would it be reasonable for you to decide that I take a pay cut to pay for your expenses early, unilaterally making that decision when you are already going to be compensated for this money in the first place? And at this point, how am I supposed to trust you that you are going to, one, inform me what was going on, two, we're actually going to put that money back into the channel in the first place after you received it from Kyle? Because at no point have I ever asked you for any single dime over what Kyle owes you, but you're asking me to put in my percentage, which you agreed that I'm 50% on, to I take a hit to pay for Kyle for you.
There would have been no hit because, again, I had said from the very beginning that the ad revenue would be going to pay for expenses and channels, which she obviously agreed to. But unfortunately, I don't think I don't think we had a meeting in mind of what that was going back into. I never asked her for any of the 5,000.
Chris, I don't think Steve is understanding my question.
I am understanding your question, but no, I have a right to respond to this.
Yes, please respond.
Okay, thank you. I had told her about the $5,000. Again, this was under the impression that she was being paid as an independent contractor. That's why I didn't ask her for half of it. If we had a full-on 50-50 partnership, as far as the channel that she says that for her mind's eye, why didn't I ask her for that $2,500? Why didn't I ask her for a buy-in from that? Why didn't I ask her, hey, we have expenses, let's pay for this? I never did, because that was not the agreement we had.
Chris, can I please point out that I have very much invested into this channel?
That's irrelevant to what I just said.
All right.
Okay,
So
I don't agree that that is irrelevant.
What you're doing is, Steve, it's not a channel.
Sorry, Manya, this is not. You're here as a witness. I'm sorry. This is between Chesh and Steve, and we need to try and we can't have people interjecting on behalf.
I'm just trying to make it easier for Steve to understand, because I agree with Chesh. She's not understanding what she's saying.
I know, but you're not here as Chesh's advocate.
I really do understand.
Yeah.
Actually, sorry, one bit of contention. I was told that I was allowed to bring Manya in as an advocate. So if that was a misunderstanding on somebody's part somewhere as a miscommunication, then that's
I
some
honestly
kind
thought
of
it was-
miscommunication.
I honestly thought it was just going to be Dapper and Chris. Those are the only two teams I mentioned.
During the
Nothing about Manya,
call,
but
during
I'm
the
happy
call
for her being here.
yesterday, it was asked if I could bring somebody with me, and you
I thought it was
agreed to
Dapper.
it, Steve.
Yes, and I thought it was Dapper.
All right.
But
Why?
That's fine.
All right. In that
Okay,
case,
whatever.
let's-
Doesn't matter.
Okay, cool. Manya is here as an advocate. I'm
that's fine.
I'm good with that. If you're good with that, or if everyone's good with that,
I'm good.
the only thing I ask is just we try and we don't want too many cooks to spoil the broth. I guess just
I will just make one comment. It's quite evident that there's a breakdown in communication, and there's no resolving this.
I think she's right on that.
Both the parties are talking past each other at this point, and if I may dare say, kind of one party is talking for the other. Let's just say that.
One party is what?
well,
One
let's-
party
let's-
is talking
no,
for the other.
Let's not.
You're talking past each other. Okay, let's take it this. Talking past each other. There's a major breakdown of communication here. Do you and I'm kind of now doubting as an outsider whether this partnership will work.
I don't think it will
If
at this
there's
point.
such a big breakdown of communication on these basic things.
Not for the Non-Sequitur Show channel.
Chris?
I don't think for this particular agreement there was. I think things have been changed. I think the agreement has been changed, and I'm not. Yeah, so I think
I think we all agree there's a breakdown in communication. Sorry, Chesh, you wanted to say something there.
I just wanted to point out that I am doing my best, but I think this has been unfair. I think I've been treated unfairly, especially the past 3 months, and that I would like to go over a bit of a financial breakdown of the jobs that I was doing, since apparently that's not being viewed as relevant as to my investment in the channel. So if I could do that, that would be Steve, please. I thought we were letting Chris guide the conversation. So I would like to go over that because I think that there is a very large disparity or a lack of understanding on what the amount of work I was actually doing and have been doing actually is. Because if you understand the way this breaks down, I don't think anybody in their right mind would agree to not have any power but be a profit share. That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Well, it makes sense to me because that's what the original was, and I've done just as much
Steve,
work.
please, why are you?
I'm responding. I've been doing just as much worrt, and here's
you don't know what I'm saying. Chris, please.
All right, but Chris,
all right, hang on 1 second. I'm going to step in because it's now getting to the point where it's going to turn into a screaming match. We don't want that. So what I'm going to suggest is we can go through that, and I think that's something important that you do want to go through, Chesh. But I think also when it comes to something like this, we would have to any agreement on any, I guess, negotiation on if the channel doesn't go forward on how that's resolved. I think would need to be tabled for a different time. We can't resolve that now.
I think that's totally fair, and I think that there is. I will stand by that. I think that if Steve says 50-50 partner over and over and over again, and then he describes 50-50, but I have this. That's not 50-50, and I think that there is any feasible way someone can take a profit share when as compensation in a way that would be fair when they have zero power or control over what is causing the profit, because this could end up in a very, very bad situation where Steve can literally do nothing and the only way I get paid is if I do everything.
Yeah, I think if we can work something out.
I'm not saying he would do that, by the way. I'm just saying these are hypotheticals of this could go very, very badly, very, very quickly.
That's a fair point. I'm just saying that I'm only willing, and this is non-negotiable, I'm only willing to pay fair compensation for the last 2 months that she has been actively participating on the Non-Sequitur Show. She gets 50% of all revenue from that, minus again the expenses, which she already agreed upon. That's all she would be fairly compensated for. Any prior thing to that, she's done on her own channel. I've done on my own channel. We put an equal amount on all that. There's nothing past that. I spent $5,000 of my own money to get the channel. She didn't put in a dime of that. So if she wants to call that an offset, which is not really the thing, that's fine, but it's not. So yeah, she can go through it, but I will not be paying her for anything other than the income for the last 2 months.
Can
That's
I get it,
non-negotiable.
Chris? Can I please for 1 second?
Mm-hmm.
I would like to put it on the record that Steve claimed that he was going to be amicable to negotiation, but is in fact not in any way, shape, or form at this point.
I am amicable in negotiation, but in a negotiation, you have to have certain things that you're not willing to negotiate on, and I'm pointing them out.
Well, let's. I think before we make decisions on what will or won't be accepted, I think
I just wanted to point that out for the record.
Yeah, that's fine. I think it's important to hear Cheshire, just so even
That's
if
fine.
you don't agree, Steve, at least you've got because it's
Absolutely.
sometimes you can't always get an agreement, but to have an understanding helps, and potentially it can be moved in a different direction that works for both of you. But Chesh, let's run through that.
I also have one question that I just want to note down before I go through that real quick. I want to know why 50-50 with Kyle is different than 50-50 with me. As I was described, I don't want an answer right now. I just want that tabled.
We'll table.
Thank you. So the description of what Steve has said on air of what I have been doing and was doing for 2.5 to coming on 3 years now has been PR management, personal assistant, and community manager for 2.5 years. I was doing this under the impression that I was going to get 50-50 of NonSequitur totality, which includes that I would get a say in the things that go on. I'm not asking for an unreasonable say. I'm not asking to not be willing to have conversations back and forth about and hash things out. I have no problem with that. But it was under the impression that I had at least some kind of say, not he's got 100% of every say of what happens. Again, I will reiterate that I have no interest in arguing or saying that I ought to have ownership of the channel because there can only be one owner. So if there was a misunderstanding and a breakdown in where Steve was saying, I retain 100% ownership of the channel, and I said, yeah, of course, there's only one ownership of the channel, I mean, that's fine, but I don't think it's fair to not be willing to negotiate based on the work that I've put in. So the numbers, as they break down, taking the median wage for each of those jobs, the low median wage for each of those jobs, then taking the median of those jobs together comes up to, for 2 years, $120,000 Canadian.
Yeah, we're not. They're not negotiating at this point.
Please don't interrupt me. I mean, I don't appreciate that you're laughing because I worked really hard for years.
That's just not. Yeah, go ahead. You go ahead.
I think now might be a good time to stop.
All right. Do we want to table this and come back to it, set a time?
No, I don't want to table it. I want a resolution because at this point it's gone into absurdity.
No, I think if I can
she's not ready to do, and I can hear she's not in a good headspace.
All right. If everybody agrees on that, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think it's best to handle this with less emotion. I can hear that.
I agree.
Look, I understand, Steve, what Cheshire's saying, and she's putting a quantifiable value on the work that she believes she's done. Now, I don't think that she's asking for that, but I think what she's saying is she wants you to understand that she believes that the work that she has put in does have a value, and she wants you to understand that and doesn't want that to be discounted.
There's always a value in work. However, when she has just said that she didn't get a say, of course she got a say. I've asked her opinion on everything, on every decision. I have come to her and asked for her opinion. Her opinion has always been valuable. For her to say that she wouldn't have a say makes absolutely no sense to me. She's had a say in every step of the way. I've always asked her. I've always valued her opinion. So when she says she doesn't get a say, I don't understand that. But my thing was that when it came to the absolute final decision making, that has to rest on one person. Right. And that's what she had to dispute with.
I still have a recording of Steve saying the opposite of that.
But before we move forward here, Chesh, I'm just going to leave it. Do you want to move forward now still, or do you want to just table it for, maybe we can have a 5-minute break?
I would like to come to, I'm not okay. So I would like to come to
That's all right,
Chesh,
Chesh.
Chesh,
You know
okay?
what? Yeah, let's take a quick break.
All right. So
fine
what
with
I'll
that.
do is we'll take a break. I'll just drop everyone out and I'll bring everyone back in. So it's saying it's at 55 minutes now. I'll bring everyone back in at the 1 hour mark. So
Okay.
I'll come on first and just say I'm bringing everyone back in. So I'll
Agreed.
drop everyone out now and we'll do that.
Yeah, fair.
Okay, we're at the 5-minute mark there, so I'm going to bring everyone back in now. Okay, I can see Steve there. I saw Dapper's said that they're back. Everyone's here?
Hello.
Cool.
Hello.
Awesome. Okay, I've been racking my brain over the last 5 minutes. I think what's important here is I think we all need to agree that let's put the past in the past and agree that we'll call it a misunderstanding. I think where you two are at, I don't think you're actually that far away from a resolution, but I think the challenge is a lot of it is, as we're trying to get this resolution, is going back to what's happened previously. And I think if we keep going backwards, we're not going to be able to go forwards.
Can we ask, Chris, can we ask what she would, I've been trying to find out what she would like for quite some time. I've asked for numbers, what she thought I owe her, because I'm trying to pay her out, right? Even though I haven't been, even paid myself on this yet. Because of AdSense, but I've asked for an actual number to see where she's at on all this, and I have not got an actual number. So can we find out? Because I know what I want. I've put it on the table, what I'm willing to negotiate, what I'm willing not to, and what I would like. Yeah. I don't know. Can I
please hear what Steve is actually willing to negotiate on? Because I've only heard what he's not willing to negotiate on.
As far I'm willing to negotiate on, Chris had said, from the previous revenue, that goes into expenditures. After a certain time, I'm happy to split all that, and we could work out something where it's 50-50 completely across all revenue for all AdSense, completely across the board at some point, and revisit it every 6 months, and things of that nature. Those things are fine. I have no problem with that. I want you to be compensated fairly. I don't know why you think that I would never want to, and I don't think you don't.
I almost said cool. Chris, can I get a clarification from you?
Sure.
It sounds to me that Steve paid out $5,000 of monies that he is supposed to be repaid to on Kyle. He wants to borrow from the channel to get that money paid back to him sooner, so he can do with it as he wills until said time as he begins getting revenue back from Kyle. Is that accurate?
I would use different terminology. I wouldn't use the term borrows. My understanding is he's looking to call that an expense, but then in the event that the money comes in from Kyle,
it goes to the channel, not to him.
That's 5 years down the line, by the way. 5 years.
I'm not concerned about time. I'm just trying to understand. Okay. So that means that he's going to take. Let me just get this clear. And please, I am asking Chris, Steve. I'm specifically asking Chris.
Sure.
There is $5,000 that Steve is counting as an expenditure. Mm-hmm. So he wants to use the money that we agreed upon to use towards that expenditure.
So the residuals from prior,
Yes. Okay. Yes. Now, that money is still owed to him by Kyle. So does that mean that money, as it comes in from Kyle, would go back into the channel, and or to 50% of that would go then to me?
So my understanding from the discussion we had, and correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, is that when that $5,000 comes in, that goes against the straight against that.
I would be willing, if the $5,000 come in, I would be willing to give her half of that back to offset that, so it would be equal on that. Yes.
Okay, so no, you're not willing to put the $5,000 back into the channel, but
I would just give it to you.
But so you're not willing to put that $5,000 back into the channel?
I don't know what that means.
Can you clarify what you mean?
So right now, the money that he's taking out is supposed to be going into channel expenses. I'm asking if he's willing to put that $5,000 back into channel expenses.
I still don't.
I think. Okay. Sorry.
If you're following it, that's fine. But I'm willing to
I'm following
here's $2,500 and give it cash to her.
So what Steve is saying is,
Steve, be careful with those offers of cash. Remember what happened last time.
Fair enough.
Okay. So here's what it would be. Okay. So yes, what Steve is saying, that would go back into the channel expenditure.
And I put that in writing.
If there's a period of time, so say there's been say Steve gets the whole $5,000 in one hit, but 1,000 has been taken out of the channel expenditure. So that money would go back in.
That 1,000 would go.
1,000 that you would have, if had it have gone in day one, that you would have gotten that split on. of that 1,000, half of that would go to you, because that's the money that is owed back to, I guess.
So we're back to agreeing that I have a 50% stake in that residual money, but we have agreed that that money is currently going into channel expenditures, whatever those expenditures may be.
That's kind of the way it was. But again, when this first thing brought up, I was like, I didn't even expect that you would want the previous. That was news to me, but it's fine. But yeah, I mean, I have no problem being equitable and fair on that. And like I said, if Kai was to have, reimburse me for that, then yeah, I'm happy to give that money back. I mean, why would I not? But right now is an expense.
Because I don't know, because you're not communicating with me in a way that I can understand.
And this is the problem. We do not have the same, I don't know if it's terminology or meeting of the minds. And this is why I hang on. This is why I feel at this time we need to work out a separation for this.
Steve, you have been cruel to me for weeks.
I have never been cruel to you.
I have it on audio. There are people that were in the moderator chat agreeing and coming to me. There were people coming to me after live streams saying, "Why is Steve being mean to you?"
Hang on, let me finish. I have the exact same thing happened to me. This is subjective evaluations. Everyone's
talking over each other.
Chris,
this is. Go ahead,
Steve, please. You might think you're not cruel to her, but it matters what she thinks.
I agree. I think she was being cruel to me, and other people have came to me saying that she's been Manya. It works both ways. Manya.
Okay. Hang on a second. I'm going to make this easy. I'm just going to mute everyone. Okay. All right. I've just muted everyone. I don't want to do this, but it's turning into a yelling match. Okay. So maybe what I'm going to suggest here is we say that Chesh feels as though she's been treated in this way. It wasn't Steve's intent. And maybe if we sort of say that, Steve, you at least be mindful of that and acknowledge that's how she feels. And Chesh, maybe if you acknowledge, okay, yes, how you feel is important, but that wasn't necessarily the intent. Maybe that's best, because otherwise it just won't move forward. So I'm just going to.
I mean, we both have our own opinions on how we've been treated. I have been treated poorly. I've been treated. I believe personally, I've been gaslit, and I believe that things have been very cruel to me in certain aspects. But I'm not making an issue of that. That was not supposed to be part of the negotiations.
Well,
that's a subjective evaluation. Now, at this point, again, I don't feel comfortable we're able to work together on this particular endeavor. I would like to work a negotiation of how we extricate.
Chris, I'm having an issue with when I'm trying to get to a point, I'm being interrupted by Steve asking me not to interrupt him.
All right. So I'm going to give the floor to Cheshire until I sort of say then, yeah, let's do
I'm
that.
saying that even during these negotiations, you are not hearing what I am saying for the majority of things. And there are things that I am not saying that you're taking that I have not said. So I would like to go back to the amounts that I was discussing, and I would like to go back to, since Steve is so desperate for a number, maybe this time he cannot laugh at me when I'm trying to demonstrate what I'm trying to talk about. Since whatever, doesn't matter. So the jobs that I was doing, according to Steve, which I have video and audio recording for, was PR management, personal assistant, community management. I'm going to now break this down in its entirety. A PR management job is a $73K to $114K job a year salary. Personal assistant is a $40K job a year salary. Community management is a $64K a year salary. These are jobs, and they are not the high end of these jobs. This is low average. So I took the median. I didn't add all these together. I took the median of those to say 60K. I was doing these jobs for 2 years. That reaches 120K for those 2 years. Now, when it comes to what I was doing on NonSequitur, if Steve wants to treat me as a contractor with no stake in what actually happens with the company or with the channel, however you want to put it, because I don't think with all of these additional things, I think it's a misnomer to call it a channel.
All right, apologies. I was listening there.
Yeah,
my
no
dog
problem.
was locked in and started barking. I didn't want to interrupt that, so I just had to let him out.
So
Okay.
with what I've been doing, this is how the amount that I've been working on since the channel started breaks down in a monetary way. 4 hours a day working on vMix for 3 months. That I broke down into a total of $1,200 for the just working part-time at about a minimum wage. The emotes are $50 a piece. That's the average going rate. That's actually kind of low for emotes. I've done $150 worth of emotes. The member icons are about a total, also $50 a piece, which is a total of $300. The main nun logo is at minimum a $100 piece of artwork. The thumbnails at about $20 a thumbnail, which is, again, a good going rate for 13 thumbnails, is 14 thumbnails is $280. The layouts, which is a $50 surcharge to make the initial layout, and then $10 for whatever change up of that layout was necessary, for 12 layouts ended up being 13 or 14 layouts. I have to double check that number. Came to a total of about $200. And then the banner, which I only charged $34, which is, again, a very, very good rate. The merchandise, instead of charging for each piece of merch, because some things are obviously more expensive than others, some things are a little bit less expensive, I just took a flat $40 for merch for each piece for $160. That ends up being a total of $2,420 over the course of the 3 months. Now, for showtime and prep for appearing on the show, I would think that with the amount that I do during a live stream, which includes hosting, modding the chat, tracking questions, tracking super chats, as well as being involved in the show, and running vMix, and running the emotes, and run all of the Stream Deck stuff, I think it's reasonable to say that that's $50 per hour, which is plus 2 hours prep for the show that needs to happen that day, that is directly for the show, not including whatever the paper that I was apparently supposed to read. With the number of shows that we've done in the past, the number of shows that have been done total is a total of, with the 2 hours prep time, is a total of 43 hours at $50 an hour is $2,150 for the months added up. Add those together, it equals, for the past 3 months, is $4,570 on the amount of work that I have put into the show, minimum.
Okay. Are you complete?
Well, if I wanted to keep going, I could say that the total for that for an amount would equal a, if you include the 120K, would equal a $1,240,570 for the past 2 years worth of work and 3 months, including the show. And if I was to take a severance package of some kind, that would be to at least complete the year, which added together would be $60K, because I still do the PR management job, I still do the personal assistant job, and I still do the community management job. This is neglecting some of the additional things that I do. If we were to finish that out for the year, it would be another $60K. Plus, if you add all those together, assuming I do no more additional artwork for the show and just move that into a total, it would be to say that I do the equivalent amount, because that would be what severance would be $18,280. Added together would be $78,280 for things related to just this year. So altogether, the total amount would be $1,000 to me, if we were to actually just math out the amount of work and money that would be paid to me if I was being paid for these jobs directly and not under a 50-50 agreement that I thought I was working under, whether that's accurate or not. This is what I thought I was working under, is a is a total of $198,280. I have one last thing, and then I'll promise I'll be done. Minimum wage in California equates to $17.86 Canadian. This is all Canadian. $17.86 Canadian, which means for the amount of work that I've done, if you were to just add up the amount of time at a minimum wage, it equals a total of $34,291.20 for 1 year. If you were to extend that to 2 years, it would be $68,582.40 for the work I was doing for the 2 years that I was under the impression that I was working a 50-50 agreement, and that's if it was just minimum wage. So that does not factor in the actual work I was doing, which is not minimum wage work. I am now complete. Please continue with the conversation.
Okay, so let me address that.
I would really rather hear Chris's thoughts first, if that's okay.
I get to respond to that.
I'm not saying that you can't respond, but I would like to hear Chris's thoughts on my breakdown.
I need to wrap my head around that a little bit.
Okay, thank you. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I get to respond now?
Yeah. Okay. I'll listen and then I'll
kind
of give my thoughts.
All right. So this seems to me exactly what Kyle was trying to do. Something that was just on a channel that makes about $500 a month.
That's funny. I could say the same.
I didn't interrupt you.
Okay.
For a channel that makes $500 a month, for her to say that she invested $200,000 worth of time seems absolutely absurd to me. The channel makes about $500 a month. At most, we were talking about making $1,000. We'd split half of that, 50, for $500 each, and have that kind of income. How at a $500 income would anybody justify $200,000 worth of work? Is just not makes absolutely no sense. Makes absolutely no sense to me. So I think that is completely irrelevant. She was never on salary. She was anything like that was never negotiated. Anything was not that talked about. Everything she did was under the contention that, or under the thing that she would get 50% of the revenue coming in. That's the deal. And so what I'd like to do at this point, again, how do we extricate from this? This is what I like to negotiate. I want to make sure she's fairly paid for the work she's done on the last 2 months. And I don't have a number for that still. So I don't know how much she thinks she's due. Again, once I get paid for that myself, obviously, because I haven't got a dime from her. I have not received a dime from AdSense from NonSequitur show yet. Not a dime.
I did give a number. I actually did give a number of the total amount of work that and an amount that would include just art assets, PMix assets, and show assets. I'm just pointing that out. But please,
if I may speak, Chris, Steve, this is a very different situation. You had a 50-50 agreement with Kyle. Cheshire is an independent contractor. Whether the channel makes any money is irrelevant. You still pay her for it.
Incorrect. She gets paid. Manya, that's completely wrong. Manya,
if she was a partner,
Manya, that's completely wrong.
If she was a partner, then Chris can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, he will, because it's completely wrong.
If Shesh was a partner, a 50% partner, then whether the channel makes an income and she gets the cut of the income, then it would matter. But because she's an independent contractor and her work comes under channel expenses, which is before the profits, she gets it. It does not depend whether the channel makes an income or not.
Technically, that's not correct. Right. And I'll explain why. And this is purely from a business and legal aspect. If it's an independent contracting arrangement with a profit share split, then the income is dependent upon the actual
and there'd be receipt and there'd be monthly receipts
unless there's a set amount agreed to as an hourly.
And there'd be monthly.
And
Manya,
what I think is best here.
Chris, I can't hear what you're saying because Steve keeps interrupting you.
What I think the best thing to do here moving forward, because I think we're kind of at a bit of a loggerhead. So I think we've actually made some progress, and I think there's either way. I'm sure we can get to an amicable resolution for everyone, whether that's moving forward together or not moving forward together. What I'm going to suggest is we do table it for 48 hours. In the meantime, I'd like to speak to you both individually without the other, and then we can either come together as a meeting of the minds, or we can we can just I can be the ham in the sandwich, for lack of a better term, to try and work out the resolution moving forward or not moving forward.
Yeah, I don't particularly have an issue with that. However, at this point, I would like to have at least a brief discussion of how to extricate from the situation, because I am not comfortable any longer in this arrangement. It has gone to the point of absurdity for a channel that only makes a limited amount of money. I don't think it's conducive to a business arrangement to have this kind of partnership, as far as this kind of this amount of it's just absurd to me. So I would like to discuss what Cheshire would like in order to extricate from the arrangement.
I would also like a little bit of clarification on Steve saying that none of my point or my numbers matter, while also saying that he's demanding a number from me.
All right. So if I can, I'm going to come in as a realistic expectation. The reality is Steve isn't going to be in a position to pay.
I'm aware of that. That was never the point I was making.
And I think what you were trying to say was, hey, here's what I've done, and had I have been paid as an employee, this is what I could have earned. And I feel you want to feel that work is valued. And
I'm trying to say that, like, I understand that there is absolutely zero reason with this misunderstanding and the way that it's been handled between the two of us, that there is absolutely, and I came into this with the expectation, especially with how Steve has still yet to explain to me what he's actually willing to negotiate on. I have not heard of a single thing that he's actually willing to compromise with me on or about or for in any way, shape, or form. But at the same time, I understood that as soon as the meeting with the mods happened the way they did, that there isn't really much coming back from that. As a resolution, one of the reasons why I brought these numbers forward and to make this clear was to, one, as Steve was saying, that I was not invested into the channel whatsoever and did not invest into it for 2 years, and I just don't believe that's true. And two, that it does not make any sense to me why I would ever agree to something where I have zero power, but have to still do still get only profit sharing. That seems like an unreasonable and an unfair expectation. And considering what Steve said yesterday, where he said that I am not very business savvy, at that point, the only conclusion I can come to is that Steve took advantage of my naivete.
That's absolutely incorrect. Yeah, see, this is what this to me is now becoming personal, that I would ever do such a thing. I want very fairness. I want to make sure that she's paid accurately. This is why I kept having her try to review the finances. I kept asking her many times, is this correct? I'm trying to pay you out. Please verify this. From the begining, I want to make sure that she was, and I never got a specific number. This is what I think I'm owed. Let me finish, please.
How is she supposed to know that you're treating her fairly? I don't get it.
Maybe.
Sorry, we'll let her finish, and then sorry,
I want to finish.
That was my fault. Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. We both feel there have been treated unfairly. So again, not a matter of under discussion. At this point, I want to do the fairest thing, and at this point, I think we need to just discuss how to extricate from the situation and how to resolve it. That's what I would like to negotiate. I've already put on the table what the original agreement that I thought we were under, that we were not obviously under, because obviously I think things were changed. I was negotiating to have the original agreement that she gets 50% of all the revenue coming in after taxation and expenditure, which was the original agreement. That's what I'm willing to negotiate. As far as the channel, not willing to negotiate. We have a loggerhead. We have an impasse. What would she like to do in order to extricate from this? This is what I want to discuss.
All right. Really quickly, Dapper's just put in the chat that just to give input, and I think Dapper's been pretty brilliant for the last hour and 20.
Yes.
It's easy when you just say literally nothing. So I was asked by Chesh to give my take, and I think that's because Steve and Chesh both respect my objectivity and fairness in the matter. And my biggest thing is, I don't really care what previous agreements were if there is a new agreement that can be agreed to. I think it's fine to change previous agreements as long as parties are okay with it. But I will say that in Steve's lawsuit against Kyle, there was a additional term that he was suing for in case most of the things that he actually thought were going on, like the actual breach of contract and fraudulent conversion and whatnot, were in there. And forgive me if I mispronounce it, but I believe it came down to quantum merit or anything. But anyway,
quantum merit.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's pay
But
for
the point of it is basically that Steve had been laboring falsely for a belief that he had a stake in the Non-Sequitur show that he did not, according to this particular case, which I think is the position that Chesh feels like she's in now. And in that, the idea was, I'm not saying, I think that in that, the idea was that there should be some kind of payment floor if there's not going to be that degree of stake. And I think that that is fair. Now, like Chris had said, I don't think there's any chance of a full-time salary being paid out for all of this work. But I do think that it is fair that there be an ask for some kind of payment floor that until the profit share goes over, that would be reasonable for any kind of contractor. Because I don't think Chesh would have signed any contract that said she's going to do work full-time for profit share without an ownership stake. And maybe I'm wrong. And that's all I have.
So just to, I'm just going to give a quick legal explanation on quantum mirror. So that only applies where there's a contract in place, and the difference there is that there was an offer and acceptance, a clear offer and acceptance between Steve and Kyle, which it looks as though with the difference of opinion. So that's it's similar to what you're saying. And
yeah, it's an analogy. I'm not saying it's the exact same.
Well, that's fair. Yeah, but that's a legal.
Just want to clarify
and by the way, Dapper, the reason why quantum root was put in there is because if all the other things that we had put in there, the unfair and deceptive trade practices, the breach of fiduciary, all that stuff, because he stole the money. It was a breach of fiduciary duty. He literally stole the money. I'm willing to pay her money. There's never been an agreement. I mean, there's never been a disagreement about that. Well, let me finish. There's never been a disagreement with that. The quantum root is if he kept all the money and I get zero while I was on the show, doing the show for 2 years, that would have been the catch-all. That's why the quantum root was in there. We had already established. Okay, so I don't know why you brought it up, because there's really, as an analogy, maybe I could give you that. But that is a legal term that doesn't apply. You do agree with that?
I know it doesn't apply. And it was an example of the idea that if someone is laboring falsely under a belief in a business organization, that there needs to be some kind of compensation for work done under a false belief about that contract. And that's the only reason I brought it up, is because there's a similarity here where Chesh was believing that she was getting something that I don't think Steve intended to agree to.
And I never did.
I'm not,
and I believe that was the case.
Steve, can you please let him finish?
And so I think the only fair resolution to this is that if Chesh doesn't get what she thought she had in terms of stake in the company, that there be some kind of payment floor. And I'm not saying you both have to agree to it. I'm just saying that is the take that I am seeing with this, that there should be a payment floor for someone who's coming in without an ownership stake and who is laboring full time.
Okay, let me ask a question, Chris.
I also have a question.
Chris, would you be willing at a future date to talk to Reds on his input, because he had input on the channel, because he was well aware of the fact that I never offered anything about the channel to Cheshire? Would you be willing to talk to Reds about that? Because obviously he was involved with the channel. Would that be of importance here? And also, I'm only, again, sticking to the original agreement, I'm willing to give her 50% for the last 2 months of the revenue coming in, because it was based upon revenue.
3 things.
Revenue, not work done. So this, again, I think we're just wasting time. What would she like in order to, I need an amount for how to extricate from this and what she would like going forward.
So, all right. So that was your question. So I'm going to come to those. Chesh, you've got the questions. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come around and kind of wrap it up.
I don't know when anything ever got changed off of in perpetuity. I also do not think that I was under the impression that when Reds extricated himself from the internet, that he extricated himself from any of this deal. And please let me finish. He now has a conflict of interest, and I don't think him being in would be fair. Third, I don't understand why it seems that we're treating Steve's interpretation of the agreement as more valid than mine. On top of that, I also like to mitigate that. There was a conversation that Steve had in the mod Discord last night where everyone was in agreement with my interpretation. So there is no point in any of our paperwork that is like he was sharing with the mods, like the oh, this person is this person is this person is this, in everything that is on the channel visually, in everything that is on the channel descriptions, the about, the Twitter, everything related, the Discord, we are being portrayed as being 50-50 equal. When it was asked multiple times, which I have in recording, is Chesh 50-50? Steve would say yes, but I have 100% veto power, and everyone, right? Yes, everyone agreed that that is not 50-50.
Okay.
Let me respond
Steve, really quickly, and then I'm going to
1 minute.
respond to everything.
There are many different types of agreements. That was pointed out the other night. I don't know why you would think that Reds had no say on it. I'm still friends with Reds. I talk to Reds quite frequently.
Because this was not communicated with
and
me.
as far again, you pointed out the conflict of interest there, and I'm keeping them separate. The mods said they don't want to know anything about the finances. They even made that very clear, even though they didn't know about the $5,000 initial investment. They didn't know.
Sorry, I forgot something. Please continue. I just wanted to note that I forgot something.
The mods were not informed about our conversations and the situation with Reds. Most of them have no idea, and I'm not going to bring it up. But the fact remains is that they weren't privy to that until I had to inform them, because I don't know what they know or what they don't know. But I know the conversations that I've had with you and Reds, and they're not matching up. And this is beyond my comprehension to even think that you think that it is anything but that. But I will give you the benefit of the doubt on that and say there was no meeting of the minds. I would like, again, how to extricate from this.
Okay.
Quickly,
for your one thing, and then I'm gonna.
Yeah, I just wanted to. Sorry, it might take me a second to get my brain around the point again.
You're right.
I'm gonna have to play this back. Steve, what did you say before Reds? Because there was something that
like I said, there's a time crunch. Look, I'm willing to do this. I won't use any of your artwork. Okay. I won't use any.
I'm not, Steve, please. I'm trying to remember the point I needed to make. I'm just asking what you said beforehand, so that way it will trigger my memory. That thing I do for you all the time.
Something about Reds. Something about the mods not being privy to the $5,000. Reds knowing that it would always be my control of the channel. That I was never. Because he, by the way, that was the key to the Ferrari. That was his analogy that you used. So I know that has been discussed.
Before that, Steve, please. I'm trying to remember a point.
I don't know. Maybe somebody else can help you with that. I don't.
Oh God, it was. God, no, it was important.
If you want, we can come back to it.
Yeah, so if I remember, I'll let you know. Yeah. But it was important. Right. I've forgotten.
So a couple of things, and maybe with what I'm going to go through, because I've been taking some notes. Maybe with what I'm going to go through, it might trigger something. If it does, just let me know. Okay, so what I'm going to suggest.
I remember. Okay. Sorry, I would like to, after you make your point, I would like to go back to talking about, I want to be allowed to be able to make this public.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Okay. So.
Well, can I weigh in on that real quick? Her willingness to make it public, it shows that this is not a fair and negotiable negotiation. Negotiations are usually private. They're business oriented. She's wanting to use it as a weapon, which means to me that this is not a partnership agreement that was ever had a meeting mindset. I would never do such a thing to her. Using this being public is weaponizing. I am not comfortable with this. I am not comfortable with this discussion because I want to be extricated. Can we negotiate an extrication? Because I don't trust her at this point that she's willing to make this public when I think that is dishonest. I think that is against the business. I think would harm the business only not because of my thing, because of her. Because again, I could bring Reds into all this, and Reds would have a lot to say on this. That would be an agreement with me. I don't want to have any. I don't want to do that, right? But again, she's willing to put this public when it is a business arrangement. It's a business type of dealing we're trying to do. This just to me is saying that she's trying to steel arm this and use it as a threat. I'm not comfortable with this. So, Chris, how do we extricate this?
Okay. I'm going to make a suggestion right now, which is actually what you've just said there, what you've both said there, is going to play into my suggestion, which is in 48 hours, I have a conversation with you both individually where we try and, because I don't think having you two together is going to resolve anything. Can we agree that for at least the next 48 hours, this will be kept as private?
We can postpone. Did anybody else record this?
Yes.
Okay.
I did not.
Again, I did not either, which again would have been known at the very beginning. I have no problem with people recording, but again, in a business negotiation, the mediator is the only supposed person to have the recording for this very reason.
Told going into this that recording this was to be expected.
From whom?
Dapper said he was recording it.
Yeah.
Chris said he was
I was
recording
going
it.
to record it until Chris said he was, and then I just
So I'm recording it. And
I have recorded this because
I did say I'd send both a
just
copy.
for my own
Right,
record.
and I'm not. Again, this seems to be weaponization.
Can we please stop with accusations, because it's not part of the discussions anyway? You're allowed to have whatever opinion you want, but
So let me ask this: whatever resolution we have, you have the intention of making it public, but I mean, I can't stop you, obviously, but I think it's to be harm you, because I'm willing to put the channel. Let me finish. Let me finish, Manya.
Don't do that.
Let me finish. Is that your intent?
I'm sorry, I need you to repeat the question.
Do you have intention of making this public?
I don't know what my intention is yet.
Okay. At that point,
I recorded this for my own purposes, and I the same way the mod channel was recorded, the same way that all of this was intended to be recorded, the same way that we intended to record all of the background things, the same way we've always said that all these kinds of conversations should be recorded.
Correct.
I recorded this under the exact same pretense that everything else has always been recorded anytime anything has ever been recorded. Not that I really think you deserve this answer anyway. At this
Chris,
point.
did you not tell me that you were wait, did you not tell me that you're going to record it and then get us each a copy of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So why does it matter if I recorded it then?
Yeah.
Well, because there might be a reason not to give people a copy of it, and I wouldn't want a copy.
Saying
you a
that
copy either. That's why they have
on.
negotiations. But anyways,
hang on. So here's what I'm going to ask, Chesh. If we say that we're going to table this for 48 hours to try and resolve it, do you agree not to do anything publicly for the next 48 hours because there's potentially, as part of an agreement, it could be a non-disclosure?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay, cool. So what we'll do is in 48 hours, I'll have conversations with you individually. I'll set it up with you. If we can all agree that everyone here, so Dapper and Manya as well, if we can all agree that the conversation that's happened here will remain private in the meantime, and because potentially when these things are usually, if we can get a resolution, generally non-disclosure is a part of that, and best for everyone moving on, because especially when there's potentially a PR narrative that may need to be made. So that's an agreement. So to answer one of Steve's questions, no, I'm not prepared to talk to Reds because Chesh isn't happy for that to happen, and also I'm not here as a judge. I don't have any decision making. I'm here purely to try and assist both of you to reach a resolution either way.
Absolutely fine.
So as far as I think opinions of mods as well, without wanting to be cruel, really that doesn't come into it, because at the end of the day, the only two opinions that matter and the only two decision makers in this process is Steve and Chesh. So that's
I do ask it. I think there will be questions from the mods, and I think that before all of this wraps up, not saying in the next 2 days, but I'm saying by when all of this is done and we no longer need to have any more meetings with anyone, there needs to be some explanation that everyone, I mean Steve and Chesh can agree on, to tell the mods, because I honestly don't think it was a good idea to bring all of them in the beginning, because now they all have a reasonable expectation of knowing what the heck is going on.
Well, sure, but they also said they don't want to know. Most of them said we're not.
That's fair,
in that.
But the ones who might want to, because they were brought in.
That's fair. Yeah, absolutely.
People are allowed to change their mind about a situation. If they didn't want to know, they might want to know.
It's almost like maybe I had altruistic reasons for wanting to record the situations. Bizarre.
I think. Look, the reality is, when this is resolved, assuming that, and look, I'm confident we can get something that everyone's happy with, whether it's moving forward together or not. I'm pretty confident we can get something, because I think there's clear misunderstandings. I think there's a lot of anger and frustration from both of you. I think there's a lot of hurt from both of you as well.
I'm hurt, but I'm not angry. There's a big difference.
Yeah, but still, I think that there's emotion involved in it.
All right, so you want to table it for now?
Both reasonable people. So I think
Yeah,
we
and
can get
I want to be
something.
I want to
And
be
then-
fair as possible. This has been the whole reason why I brought in the mods. This is why I want
Right.
open transparency. This is why I know.
Then why are
what's
you,
fair.
if you want open
So-
transparency, why are you not okay with this getting recorded?
Because I'm afraid you might try to manipulate it and weaponize it. Because
Wow,
I know
Steve.
look,
Okay.
Manya, with all due respect,
Excuse me for a moment.
Why? Okay, okay.
with all
okay.
due respect,
Can I
Manya,
say
Manya,
something about-
Manya, sorry.
all due
let's-
respect.
let's
No,
try to
this
explain
this goes both ways. This
no,
is
Manya,
absolutely absurd.
Manya, with all due respect, she's even said
No,
that she
you don't have any respect. You have shown no respect to Shesh
Sorry.
today.
All right. This is here's what's going to happen right now. Okay. I'm going to organise to talk to you both within 48 hours. Now, if either of you want to have someone else there, that is absolutely fine.
I would like to have Reds Rhetoric there, if he would.
Okay, for the private conversation with you.
Yes.
Okay, Chesh, whoever you want to have there as well, I'm happy to. Now, I think what's going to happen here, if we continue, is it's just going to get more and more heated. And that
So you want to table it. I'll postpone the thing on Monday. But the next meeting, I want it strictly to be about how do we extricate from the situation? How do we go to our separate ways? It's amicable. That I have no fear of retaliation. I have no fear of weaponization. I want, I care about Chesh. I want to do what's fair for her. I would never do anything or say anything negative about her in any way, shape, or form to anybody. So I want to make sure that is extended to me as well, because right now I'm not quite sure what to expect. So that's the reasons why I think that, just having an amicable separation, because I would be happy to do Caffeine Corner with her still just the way it was. That was very fine. I did over and under with you. That was very fine. I'm willing to even just, put the NonSequitur channel on hold and not even worry about it, because I told Cheshire from ages ago I wasn't even sure if I even want to do the show any longer, and she understood that. And I said, why don't you do it with someone else? Just give me 10%. I was willing to work with her, but at this point, I don't feel uncomfortable to have a business relationship as far as the NonSequitur show. If she wanted with something else, I'm completely fine with that. We can work out something like that very simply, because I worked it out with her before and there was no problem with that. But as far as the NonSequitur show, I would like to extricate and pay her what she's due and go our separate ways.
All right.
That's
so
my intention.
Here's what I'm going to ask for our conversation, Chesh. Come up with a figure that you think is fair, that I can then, and any other terms, conditions, and
Is
then
that something that I can talk with you about then? If you're talking to both of us, you said you wanted to talk to each of us individually, right? Is that
so each individually. So that's something that I guess I was going to say that you could think of, that then when I have a conversation with Steve, I can say, Steve, here is what, and I assume that there may be multiple back and forths.
Sure, yeah, that's fine. I don't have any the only thing I think is fair is that I think, given that if we're treating Steve's interpretation and my interpretation of the agreement in good faith, assuming that there was a miscommunication, then I think it is fair for me to get something a little bit different than only Steve's interpretation of the deal, given that I was doing work under different pretenses.
Sure. And look, however you think that best looks, and because obviously this is sort of going it's not fair for either party to say, right, let's get a number. Now let's agree. There needs to be time and consideration to go into this to do it properly. So if you want to, I guess, think over the next 48 hours, Chesh, and then we can discuss the proposal that you think's fair. I'll discuss with Steve what he thinks is a proposal is fair, and ideally we'll get somewhere. Hopefully,
I'm okay with that.
Close for both of you, that everyone walks away, I guess, satisfied.
But it is what we're so I'm clear. We are negotiating over the 48 hours. What I would like to extricate. Correct. I'm not willing. Okay. I'm not willing to partner with her any longer on the show. I'm not willing to. That's non-negotiable. That's now off the table. But I want to make sure she's fairly compensated. Okay.
And then, so I guess so if you both want to think what that could look like as far as that fair compensation and moving forward, in the meantime, this conversation that's agreed will remain confidential until such time as those conversations have been finalized. Like I said, because there may be a non-disclosure or a joint statement that you two want to put out together, and we don't want to have anything that could
Right. No,
potentially compromise that.
I think the joint statement is optimal. She still has her channel that she does. She does great stuff on her channel. I have my own personal channel, even if I don't do anything longer on the Non-Sequitur show. I think it would be extremely detrimental to have any kind of, finding external. I care about Chesh.
I think it might be poignant, Steve, that we both remove each other as managers and mods off of each other's channel for the time being.
Sure.
And I think with what you're saying, since it's non-negotiable, you may as well remove me off of Non-Sequitur show anyway. I do have one other thing I'm probably going to ask about, but
Sure.
that will come down the line, so it doesn't have to be covered right now. I just need to write it down real quick so I don't forget. Sorry, go ahead.
And we
I can agree with
discuss
that.
it.
Yeah, I can remove
Right.
myself as manager from a channel. Yes.
All right. So just to be clear, so we'll end this now. I'm going to try and talk to you both reasonably within the next 48 hours. Obviously, I think we all accept that because of time differences, time zones, and just being able to get together, there could be a little bit of a discrepancy in the 48 hours.
I'm
exactly.
flexible, and I'm not worried about like an urgency of, oh, Steve better get back to me right this second. That's
Excellent.
fine.
Cool. And we also agree that yes, there's going to be a recording of this that will be available for both Steve and Chesh, but it remains private until such time as this matter's finalised, because for the reasons we explained earlier. So if everyone's good with that, Steve, you're actually muted. I don't know if you.
Oh, I said, yeah, I'm absolutely fine with that. I won't be discussing with anybody else. If she just wants to talk to Dapper or Manya about it, that's actually, absolutely fine. Okay. But I won't be bringing any else. I won't be talking to anybody else about it for 48 hours, with one exception, just to let him know that when I talk to you, I will ask him if he's willing to come into that conversation with you. Okay.
I'm not comfortable with Reds being involved at all due to a conflict of interest, but that's I'm just noting that I'm not. It's just a note. Since when has that ever mattered?
What is the conflict? Would you like to tell what the conflict of interest is?
Reds and I dated, and it didn't end well.
Right. Okay. So, but unfortunately, he's still part of the Non-Sequitur show input. He's still, he always has been, because of it.
Whether it's conflict of interest or not. I'll let Chris decide on that. I defer to his better judgment on this one.
My thoughts are, I wouldn't allow Reds to come into a conversation or negotiation with Cheshire.
Right. I agree with that.
However, really, he would only be there, I guess, in a support or advocate. Well, not even really an advocate, because there's nothing really, more of a support person.
It would be like, Reds is backing up that this is what Steve says the agreement was. He could
be questioned on it.
To me,
that's what you mean, though, Steve, right? Like, as a quote unquote witness to whatever discussions would.
What's wrong with having a witness?
I don't think
I didn't say it was bad. I'm just trying to help explain what you were trying to say in a way that I made sure I understood what you were saying and Chris understood what you were saying.
Yeah. Okay. And I'll be clear that it doesn't
I'm getting
matter
very tired.
it doesn't matter who's a witness to what. I'm not here to make a decision. I am not here.
Exactly.
I'm not a judge.
You're mediate, anyway. Right? I got you. So, but he might help you in the mediation, is what I'm saying.
Sure. Okay. So if we're all good with that, I understand it's probably very late for all of you where you are. So let's end it here. If anyone has any questions in the meantime, send them to me, and I'm happy to respond. And any conversations. So any conversation I have with Chesh remains between myself and Chesh. Any conversation I have with Steve remains between myself and Steve, and I won't be discussing it with anyone else.
That's fine.
Is that a matter of like a barring whatever needs to be told to one or the other of?
Within reason. It's if something's said in confidence, or if you ask a question.
Yeah, this is the first time I've done this. I just wanted to be clear about what the expectation was, because how that seems to apparently go.
Reasonable expectation. So if you were to say, I want
this is my offer to Steve, then I will pay for them. Reasonable expectations.
So
I think everybody has reasonable expectations.
Yeah. If something's clearly said in confidence, then it remains in confidence, and I ask that everyone respects that.
Agreed.
So, all right, cool. So let's wrap it up there. I'll download the recording a bit later, and I'll get it to you guys in the next sort of 24 hours. Yeah.
Sure.
Are you just going to drop it in like a Google Drive that we all have access to, or?
Yeah, I've got to download
Okay.
it first. So what it does is
Yeah. I
it
just
saves
wasn't
in
sure
the cloud
if you
on
were going to like
StreamYard.
email it to us individually, or if you're going to drop it in like a box. So it's a Google
Yeah,
Drive.
I'll put it in on Google. Yeah.
You can yeah, you know how to find each of us.
Yeah. So all right.
I think one small caveat: to remove me from the channel from the manager chest, I think that has to be on your end. I don't know how to voluntarily.
Yeah, so
do that.
you've got to remove me from yours, and I've got to remove you from mine. I just
Well, yeah,
I just
but
didn't want to do that without like.
Well, we're talking about. I'm not talking about moderation. I actually have manager for your channel, right?
Yes.
You have to remove that.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, cool. Easy. All right. Well, I'll talk to you all in the next 48 hours, and yeah, cool. Thank you.
Thank you,
everyone.
Chris.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers. Really quickly, Chesh, just while you doing okay? You all right? I saw you